Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So today I wanted to quickly speak on the state of the game and not necessarily the details because there weren't too many details in terms of new content coming. In fact, what we got were a lot of contrary, in my opinion, contrary frames of reference. And I'll put that into perspective for everybody. Now, the developers seem to be trying their best. I think they were in a very, very huge struggle in today's state of the game. It just felt like they had a lot of things that they wish they could speak about, but for some strange reason, I think that there are agendas that don't want them to speak about anything. And so they did come around and say, we know it feels like our silence is making the community feel like we're not hearing them. So we're going to come on these platforms and just kind of, speak about things that we're able to speak about, even though we can't speak about things that we know that we can speak about to kind of calm the communities. It was really strange. A lot of contradictories. Even Yannick at one point said something like, I know it's hypocritical of me to say that we want to speak about things, but we're sitting here not being able to speak about anything. So what does that mean? I feel like there are people that are pulling the strings behind the scenes, and I feel like they probably have a company-wide mandate to not talk about anything in terms of future content. Now, that old school mentality is absolutely asinine in today's world, especially for the demographics of the Division 2. So the people that we see in front of the cameras, I think they're just a different layer of what's going on in the background. But today they had the announcement that there was going to be a hardcore mode. The hardcore mode is going to be where you create a new character. New character is subject to permadeath, and then you have to start all over again. I would play it, but I just got my fourth character to level 30 World Tier 1 or World Tier 2, so I'm not deleting the fourth character for nothing, especially the fact that that character got bugged when I was trying to level it up. For those of you who watch my videos, you remember that period when I say, hey, my fourth character is bugged, and a lot of you said just go back and play the story mission with somebody who was trying to level up a different character, and that took me a lot of time, so that ain't happening. So one thing I feel like Massive can do, and this is some constructive feedback, is find a way to add a fifth character. I mean, I think that's a possibility. That way players who have already leveled up four characters and maxed them all out, have multiple gear, branded items, builds and all that, can say, okay, let's just try this permadeath thing or, whatever, and see how it goes. I think that would be something that would be a good measure and a sign of good faith to the community, because a lot of people have said that they don't really think this hardcore mode is something people wanted. There are other things people wanted, and they're not getting it. But I want to be fair. I don't want to be bashy. I really saw something that, as an adult, watch that state of the game and see these guys just struggle. I really felt bad for them, man. Being an employee is just one of those things that it just sucks. You have to do things that your bosses want you to do. And I think that's kind of the situation that they were in. Fine, there are people that are massive, but there are a lot more people that call the shots, that things that are just above their pay grade. Let's just call it what it is. And it's a weird place to be. And I think these guys on the forefront kind of know what the community wants, but they have to follow their corporate agenda, which that's the thing about corporate agendas. People who start wearing suits, the moment they get off the keyboards and stop programming and stop talking to the community, they lose touch. And once they lose touch, they start directing everybody else to do things that are out of touch. This is a very huge theme that happens in big organizations. And I think Massive is big enough. 400 people, studio that, that pocketed over 100 and something $1 million from the Division 1. I think they're already too big to be able to see things from that perspective of like, hey, we want to have a relationship with, the community. So in that case, this is what we're going to be getting for the most part. In fact, they even also confirmed that they did not have plans for survival or underground. And, a lot of people have requested these two modes. Now, there is the part where people can say, well, not a lot of people were extracting from survival mode in the Division 1, and so it just seemed like a lot of players were not engaging in it, so they probably don't want to do that mode. But I saw that comment on something, and I just want to argue, like, where did you see the data to that? Massive shows nobody any data. So if you don't have the data, it's going to be one of those things where you're just also interpolating, like we are interpolating, that a lot of players will like survival. Everybody is just making guesses. So I think we're all on a level playing field. And so if players have been asking for survival and underground, I think they need to seriously consider it. Now, one of the other developers did say that, just because they're not planning for it doesn't mean that it's not something that they can eventually put on the back end. So I have to be very fair and say, okay, so the door is not entirely closed towards survival and underground. So it's probably something we're going to see in the future. Who knows? But, one of the things that I feel like is just going to be very frustrating to a lot of the community, and people are going to continue to just leave, is this mindset that being secretive is the way to go. I don't think it's the way to go. I think with the Division community, they've had time to spend, with their community. They've had 3 years. What are they hiding? What are they keeping a secret from this community that kind of, reads ins and outs, where NDAs mean almost nothing because people tell their friends and their friends tell their friends, and everybody kind of knows what's coming up. So if they're going on this secret path, it doesn't really do them any favors, in my opinion anyways, because if the content is being developed and the content is most likely developed to a specific area, then they can start talking about that to continue to keep interest of the community. Why do people not get this stuff? Like, I guess it's because they're usually people are especially in these corporate settings, people are always in their little bubbles, and so they don't necessarily see things from the outer workings. Whereas some of us, we've just had the opportunity to be able to talk to people in different experiences in life, and we understand how people work and how people tick. I'm not saying like I'm some kind of people expert. I just read comment sections. That's all I do. When you read comment sections, you see the way people respond when you're open to them versus how people respond where they just feel like you're, cutting them off. And, you could chalk it up anyways. I've seen people call me a crybaby, say, oh, you want everything and you want it now. And I laugh and I'm like, well, you're living in a different world. You just wait and see another company come out with an MMORPG that has the same thing the Division has to offer, and looks at all the mistakes that they've made and correct them and see if there'll be anybody left playing this game. That's all you need. You need somebody else that will just come and just do it, which is what the world runs on. The world runs on a new upsetting, factor in the market, which is somebody that's going to make a game and listen to what people want. I mean, people are benefiting from it. I have all kinds of testimony to that. Look at this game here, God of War, single player God of War game. Sure, there were a few mechanics that people kind of said we didn't want in a game, but those mechanics were inspired by other successful games that had them, like the Atreus thing. That was a mechanic that was actually inspired by The Last of Us, where you had a companion going with them. If you ask the director of that game, they'll tell you. Look at Spider-Man, PS4 Spider-Man. Do I have the disc here? It's in my PlayStation right here. The reason that game was successful, one of the reasons the game was successful, was because people said that they wanted to see a Spider-Man game that made you feel like you were Spider-Man. So what did developers do? After making so many Spider-Man games, there's so many of them, they eventually decided they were going to find a way to get the swinging right. I mean, technology probably then didn't allow for that. So they worked hard. They got the swing right. They got the cameras right. They did everything that they could to get one of the best Spider-Man voiceovers, who's amazing. They recorded his voiceover, both in him at a rest state and him at an excited state. They got the best music that they possibly can. They got the suits in there, suits that players were asking for. They asked for suits and they gave them suits. And so I'm thinking to myself, if you're going to sell a game, you got to sell it on goodwill. It's just the way we do things in gaming world. But like in the good old South, they say, we do things over a handshake. In gaming world, we do it by community goodwill. And I think that's the way Massive is going to succeed. I really want them to succeed. I'm not really I like the underdog. When everybody is beating down on Massive and all that stuff, I really want this, because right now they're in the underdog position. As much as you can say, they've had so much to do and so much to learn, I feel like they're just behind the scenes decision makers that are not making healthy decisions. It cannot be these same folks. It's really hard to believe it. I mean, it might be them, but honestly, I think that there are factors all over the place that are like the hardcore mode. Okay, let's just talk about this hardcore mode for a little bit. The way that they sold this to us on the state of the game was there was a small team that wanted to work on this and thought it was a wonderful idea. So they ran with it, and then eventually they're bringing it out. And I'm like, what is the biggest demand for players for the Division 2 in terms of content? Like, who sanctioned off that decision? I'm not saying it's a bad decision, but Could the resources not have been spent doing some other kind of content that players have been asking for? Question mark. It's not my company to run, so I need to shut up. But that's all I have to say for today. Thank you very much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys so much. And I guess I'll see you in my next video. Peace.